Modern Horizons 3 is here. We get our first surprise look, a dump of cards onto the scene, talking about some of the most powerful cards that we are going to see in the modern format. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you want to see it, Modern Horizons is going to change Modern again, and at this point, with this rate, we will see that it will change Magic again. This is probably the most influential set of cards to exist in Magic the Gathering. It feels like every single format where these cards are legal, Modern, Legacy, Vintage, Commander, all these formats just get shifted in such a big way in terms of power level, and I want to go through those cards today. Let's go right into these first looks. Now, all the cards are going to be linked down below in the article, but of course, I'm going to select a few and talk about why they're very important. You don't want to miss this. Absolutely insane. Kappa Cannoneer. Ooh, okay, so I will say first and foremost, Affinity has seen a pretty big hit for a very long time. Obviously, Karn the Great Creator is a very big problem against this archetype. And in general, in Modern, Affinity just has a real hard time creating value, right? It hasn't been a top deck for a very long time without fast mana. But I will say Kappa Cannoneer, having Ward 4 and Improvise being a 1 mana 4/4 that is essentially hexproof, it is essentially untargetable. Just being able to grow based on kind of the other artifacts that exist on the battlefield, it's just going to continue to grow, and it can't be blocked. An unblockable threat is huge, because a big problem that you get with the Karn structs that you can generally make in Affinity, those are just chump blocked in so many ways, unless you add a Shadow Spear or something like that to it. Kappa Cannoneer just having that trigger of whenever it enters or another artifact enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on Kappa Cannoneer, and it can't be blocked this turn. Huge, untargetable, unblockable. This is an insane threat in Modern. Modern Affinity is about to get a big boost because of Kappa Cannoneer. Next up, I want to talk about Ugin's Labyrinth. Okay, colorless lands that make 2. Think about that. So imprint, when an Ugin's Labyrinth enters the battlefield, you may exile a colorless card with mana value 7 or greater from your hand. So it's not a creature. It could be any type of permanent, like an artifact or something like that. Something with Devoid that has a high CMC. Then what you do is you tap it and add 1 colorless. If you have a card exiled under the Labyrinth, then you can add 2 instead, and then you can tap it to return the exile card to its owner's hand. This card is insane because you get to imprint the card and then potentially return it later, and then the land is still usable. There is so, like, yo, imagine you just have like this unplayable card in your 7, but you have an Ugin's Labyrinth. Instead of mulling that hand away, you can then use the Ugin's Labyrinth to imprint under it, get value, and return it later. This is a land that taps for 2. Lands that tap for 2 on turn 1 are busted. This is a 2 land. This Modern is getting this. This is an untapped land that taps for 2. It does not matter what the restrictions are. Tron, colorless Tron, Eldrazi Tron, everything boosted up by Ugin's Labyrinth. This is a card. Heck, you exile it under it. Thoughtseize protection. Gotta name the niche things too. Insane. I'm telling you, it's going crazy. Winter Moon, 2 mana. Artifact players can't untap more than 1 non-basic land during their untap step. The reason I'm mentioning this is that if Modern goes in a direction where multicolored decks are going to be huge, this is coming straight out of a Karn board. This is a fantastic one-of in a Karn Wish board, and that's why I want to bring it up. It may be a little bit more niche. Again, decks generally speaking are kind of 50-50 in terms of like, they do have basics, they don't have basics. There are a lot of decks that this just hoses, but there's a lot of decks that can surprise, just kind of get this out of nowhere. Obviously, Winter Moon and Blood Moon, you know, there is half a synergy, not really. Regardless, though, being an artifact for 2 is really cheap. You can get Tron on 7 and play this out with Karn the Great Creator. A lot of applications. I really just want to mention this because it's a really cheap artifact with a really powerful effect that's going to come out of a Karn Wish board. That's just the truth of the matter. Kudo, King Among Bears. I want to name this because this is literally a hate bear. So read this effect. For 2 mana, 2/2, green and white, Kudo, King Among Bears says other creatures you control, other creatures, sorry, not you control, other creatures, everyone, your opponents, yours, in an EDH group, everyone on the table, have base power and toughness 2/2, and are bears in addition to their other types. So this is literally a bear that reduces the power and toughness of everything to be the same. Obviously, if they have counters on them, it could potentially be boosting them up, right? If it's a Karn struct with 1/1 counters, you're going to be adding 2 to the power of all of those. But generally, if cards are just base power 7/7s, you're bringing them down. This card is kind of sick. All right. I'm not saying that this is generally going to be played really in these colors. You're really only going to be seeing this in the Coco decks, and Coco hasn't really been a relevant card for a very long time. But just having this effect where all other creatures, base power and toughness 2, it doesn't change their types, it doesn't eliminate abilities, but I think changing power and toughness across the board is really powerful. Null Elemental Blast. This one I don't know about. Look, so we're already getting lands that tap for 2 on turn 1 with very little downside. Now we're getting colorless counter spells and giving access to Eldrazi players access to counter target multicolored spell, destroy target multicolored permanent. So red Elemental Blast, blue Elemental Blast, but instead of that, this is Null Elemental Blast. Counter a multicolored spell, destroy a multicolored permanent. Now there's no if clause, so this is very different to some of those spells where some of those spells would say counter it if it's multicolored, destroy it if it's multicolored. So if you're working under an ensnaring bridge, you can't just get rid of this out of your hand. If you're working with like hand counts, you can't just cast this spell for free. So you miss that niche case, but you get to counter and destroy a multicolored spell and or permanent. You know, we're thinking to fairies that have entered the battlefield, anything out of domain, 4/5 color Omnath. There are so many things that Null Elemental Blast hits. I would not be surprised if this is like a play set in colorless decks. Just legitimately a play set. There might be decks out there that can randomly produce colorless mana that do want to produce this as well, just to be able to counter and target and destroy multicolored permanents. Modern has slowly become a multicolored format. There are a lot of multicolored spells, so you want to be able to stop those spells. This spell is actually quite insane, especially in older formats, Legacy and Vintage. I could very well see where this gets powerful. Obviously in Vintage and stuff, you have a higher presence of colorless spells. But again, this isn't exactly countering Force of Will, but there are going to be some niche cases where there are specific permanents that you want to get rid of that are multicolored. Nethergoyf. Now this, oh wow, the Death of Goyf. Nethergoyf's power and toughness is equal to the number of cards among cards in your graveyard, and its toughness is that +1. This is Tarmogoyf at 1 less mana, and it has an escape ability. This card is insane. Okay, Goyf, decent at 2. Historically busted modern card that defined an era. Nethergoyf though, this card is nuts. This is nuts. This is a crazy 1-drop. This is a crazy 1-drop. It isn't Ragavan levels, but it's comparable. It has the ability to be recurred from the graveyard if it gets destroyed. It's like a what? Look, at most it's a 1 mana 1/2 on turn 1. I get that. You fetch, you put a card in there, 1 mana 1/2. If you happen to put a Mishra's Bauble in there, it's a 1 mana 2/3, but it will just grow from there. As a mill player, fear, pure unadulterated fear, shock. I'm stressed. This card has me stressed out. This card has me stressed out. This is the definition of how removal just cannot match up with things anymore. This is insane. If you don't remove this, this just grows. Like, look at this card. Again, it doesn't give you that incremental value that Ragavan does at 1, but the power proposition is insane at 1 mana. And it can be escaped. It can be returned. You can recur this. Like, I mean, you know how Goyf is just like a bad top deck? Forget Goyf being a top deck. This is a forever deck. You always have this in your graveyard. You're gonna start bringing in a graveyard to stop your Nethergoyfs. Oh, this card is insane. I can't talk about it anymore. It's insane. Okay, so what is probably gonna be one of the most busted spells to come out of this set? This is gonna be a high value card. This is gonna pre-order for a crazy amount of cash. Excuse me. Flare of Denial. This is so Nikachu spoiled this or kind of talked about this. You may sacrifice a non-blue token creature, a non-token blue creature, rather than pay this spell's mana cost, counter target spell. So on a base side, it is just a regular counter spell, blue, and 1, counter target spell. It can be free if you sacrifice a non-token blue creature. So 2 restrictions. This card, however, is absolutely insane in Merfolk. Merfolk is getting so many pieces of support that I can't talk about right now, but Flare of Denial is one of them. The deck already plays Force of Negation. They're already playing a bunch of free spells. Flare of Denial literally just says counterspell for free. There are so many spells that deck plays, so many creatures that say sacrifice it or sacrifice another merfolk, and then you counter target non-creature spell. Imagine just being able to counter, like cast that and cast that and just counter creature spells. This counters everything. This counters everything. Like, this card is like, I can't even express to you. Like, I just merfolk crazy, about to go off. Blue creature decks about to go off with Flare of Denial. I'm so happy this is restricted, because let me know what you think in the comment section down below. What other archetype other than merfolk is going to be absolutely busted with this card? This is a playset card in merfolk. This is insane. This is like almost functionally Force of Will for that deck. Almost. It's like better if they just have the spell in their hand. They just get rid of a creature. This is insane. Those are all the cards that I generally wanted to talk about. There's so many more in this article down below. We didn't talk about Hergas, the erupting Null Kite. We didn't talk about Orem's Chant or Null Drifter. Heck, Meltdown is a great crazy card here too. There's just so many things that we didn't talk about. You can check them out in the link down below, but I need your thoughts. I'm actually just like, I'm stressed out thinking about this. Like, it's absolutely insane that these are the cards that we're getting coming out of Modern Horizons 3. I like, you know, we have some energy support here with kind of what is this, Kothian Nightmare. Like, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Modern Horizons 3 is about to change the game. Oh, this is the set I've been looking through for years, and I really need some mill support, or else it looks like mill is about to take a huge nosedive, because I'm seeing nothing that we can use.